This might end up being a painfully haughty piece, and please forgive me for that. Sometimes you wanted to find a passage into some hidden knowledge, some special truth, a pleasurable third eye through which to view the most enriching outcomes going forward. And via the internet, it seemed possible to find it somewhere, perhaps even in the form of some pre internet media, now more readily accessible via the internet. This could be in the form of Hodorowski films, some documents of Philema, writings about LSD, or texts by William S. Burroughs, but usually after accessing these works, one can't help but reduce the experiences to a stoned novelty as they are forced back into the suburban trap and the monotonous work grind. This isn't to take away the superluminal imagination of artists such as Hodorowski or Burroughs. I consider them geniuses to this day at composing their particular crafts, although there was once a late adolescence aspiration that these works would catapult me into some sort of endless trip wherein everything from now on would be good, that I would attain some divine insight to acquire all that I may want in life, and that nothing would ever be boring again. I think this reflects the experiences of a lot of people who played around with mind altering drugs, hallucinogens, the psychedelic family, or even just with cannabis, an exciting adventurous prospect in their late adolescence and or 20s, the one which fails to impact the world outside of the trip significantly enough to make a truly altering difference in one's overall disposition or apparent good fortune in day-to-day life. As leisurely recreation, one need not bemoan some of these compounds. It is difficult to shake the initial anticipation that one might become some all-knowing super hippie and get all one would ever like. Wisdom, girls, trippy media, and above all, a dream of endless fun. See, feeling all lucid and knowing is one thing. The sheer pleasure and good feeling, that's the principal motivating factor for the excited. An escape not from ignorance they'd like, but an escape from repetitive boredom. We all sought after this sort of thing, those of us who grew up with access to a home computer, the secret to an ideal ethos, the perfect way of thinking, the mentality that would illuminate the path for us going forward. And how does this relate to Corman's The Trip? Well, The Trip was one of those films I attempted to gain some juicy insight from, as though it were a Hodorowski film, one of the surrealist classics, or one of those psychedelic animated ventures, Schwankmeyer's Alice, Lalu's Fantastic Planet, or Oshi's Ghost in the Shell. And how did it fare? I don't remember enjoying it much at the time. I much rather the Hodorowski features, the surrealist classic films from Buñuel, Rene, or Lynch, or even as much as the rather classic Easy Rider, which Fonda and Hopper went on to star in to much greater praise and wide recognition. The truth is, The Trip is a very interesting production, and if one is to look past its prospective flaws, it is such a magnificent novelty as to be pretty remarkable. At barely over 80 minutes in length, The Trip is a fun time if you're willing to stomach a silly movie about drugs, man. Though it almost makes me melancholic, your life never becomes as exciting as those films or the corresponding drug experiences really tease, and in a sense you have no one but yourself to blame, assuming that there was going to be a fun, easy way out for you, some esoteric knowledge derived special treatment. Well, you get to learn that if you're seeking some great liberating truth to the mundanity of your restrained existence, you best search for one that liberates everyone, to avoid the bad karma of being in the search for hidden knowledge in order to win the contest of social culture, reap rewards of life uniquely, as opposed to the hidden knowledge that might benefit all of us and exacerbate the positivity via it being then universal. It isn't that there is no value to any yearning, although really one has to make a more of a concerted effort for reality to seem exciting than they would prefer. You can change your own psychology to some extent, perhaps, and yet it will not make your compromised existence any less banal. You can have some indulgent time set aside on weekends, the equivalent of binge drinking, except consuming surrealist art or psychoactive drugs, although it doesn't accepting these works as simple temporary escapes from a grueling exterior, really reducing them to the point of them being prospectively unimportant and maybe even not worth viewing. Would anything be worth viewing if it wasn't at least going to offer some insight against the miseries of the environment then around you? But why would anything be exciting forever? What one task could one commit to forever and it be eternally exciting? I can think of a crass couple of rest and responsibility are required even for these primordial batteries. The concept of being some amateur guru, jubilant and excited, even in the auto-generating sprawl of suburbia, I don't know if it holds the weight that it used to, and every path to further happiness leads one to decide to become a time-starved family man. No ill fate by any means, but one which enforces you to the market economy strife which generations have been chained to, no visible way out to this very moment. All those daydreams end in the ideal presence of the immaculate girl, and the desire to be childless escaped me, navigating me toward a path that, even if I were determined to preserve some experimentation or idiosyncrasy or anti-mundanity into my disposition or desires to change aspects of the world around me, I would always be compelled to compromise, as every previous generation has, for the sake of a beloved, unconditionally cherished family. And then suburbia doesn't seem so ugly anymore. Did somebody do it up? And then anything is inherently a little bit happier knowing that you accomplished the one thing at least. Although the anxieties and responsibilities are overwhelming, you accept that you can only ever do your best, even if you constantly strive to improve. The point is, maybe happiness ought to be your goal, not hidden knowledge, and if the knowledge has been hidden away but might help people share it far and wide, the happier we all are, the happier we'll all be. And if it liberates us from these psychologically destructive hells we've designed for ourselves, we can get on to aspiring toward more productive and worthwhile concerns, unburdened by fear of the selfishness of others, that someone might do that, so we need to stoop to their level to stop them from doing this. If that an impression upon others is in any way, shape, or form considered important, all that you might be subject to the crippling grasp of boredom. There's no known way there, but if I ever find it, I'll share it here for free on AOD. I guarantee you that. I do really like the trip for the dichotomy of how I felt my life might be after certain either psychedelic or intense artistic experiences versus how it was. It gives me pause, and while certain experiences, relationships, outcomes, I wouldn't change for the world, I am concerned sometimes that what I might think had I known it wouldn't end up being as rosy at the end, or at least on the way. Would I still have been motivated to do anything? I can't answer that with any certainty, but I know that it is always important to keep going, to perpetually, as much as one can, endure, for the sake of those who might love you, for the sake of those you deem enemies, and for the sake of expressing gratitude to the fortune which keeps you breathing, and other human beings now and across history, either in suffering or just dead. Because how do you wish you went about life if you suddenly woke up forwarding through time on your hypothetical deathbed? I hope you weren't tripping when you clicked onto this page and finished this piece. If you have, to soothe oneself, go check in with some Alan Watts videos for a couple hours, read some old Mondo 2000 pieces, or listen to a bit of VMT record stuff from the 90s. That'll get you going again. Guarantee it.